Have you ever been home alone? Late at night when you're trying to go to sleep, but you keep hearing these footsteps in your house. Now, you try to tell yourself that it's just your imagination, that no one is really home with you. But then the footsteps start to get louder, and they seem to be coming closer. Then you hear this knock on the wall next to you, slow and deliberate, and you can't help but wonder if you should be afraid. Well, I have. And it was the scariest moment of my life. It was las 3 de la mañana. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I was scrolling through my phone, trying not to think about how quiet it was. The only light in the room came from my laptop screen and my phone. It was dark, too dark to see any shadows in the corners of the room or along the walls. The heater was on, but the air was still cold, so I pulled the covers up higher around my shoulders, and that's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and they were coming from the hallway outside my bedroom. At first, I told myself it was just the old pipes. After all, this was an old building, or maybe it was the heating. It did make that sound sometimes, but this sound didn't match either of those. This sounded like footsteps. Someone or something was walking in the hallway. What was it? Why would someone be walking around in the hallway at 3 in the morning? Who was it? Whoever it was, they were getting closer. I turned to my side, burying my head in my pillow. But even though I could no longer see the hallway, I could still hear what was going on. Then the footsteps stopped. They stopped right outside my door. I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest. Should I get up? Should I check to see who was out there? What if it was dangerous? Should I call 911? My mind raced over all these scenarios, but my body wouldn't move. I was frozen with fear. All I could do was listen. A few seconds passed, then the footsteps started again. They were still out there in the hallway. They were pacing back and forth. I tried to take a deep breath, but I couldn't. The footsteps stopped again, this time for longer. Were they waiting for something? Waiting for me to do something? I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I was too scared. Then, I heard a noise. It was a very faint scratch, like someone dragging their fingernails across the floor. I fell backwards off the bed. I had dropped my phone, but it wasn't the sound that worried me. It was the fact that whoever was out there was now inside my apartment. How did they get in? I had locked my door. I remembered my front door was unlocked, because earlier that evening I had come home with groceries, and it was easier to just leave it open. I never did that, but I guess I had been tired. The sound was coming closer. I could hear it now. I could hear the scratching and shuffling and whatever else they were doing. I thought about calling 911, but my phone was just out of reach, and I was too scared to move. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to hide. But hide where? Where could I hide? There was no one else here. I looked around the room frantically, my eyes darting from window to closet, to under the bed. I was looking for anywhere I could hide, but there was nowhere to hide. As the sound got closer, I remember thinking, what if they find me? What if they find me? I curled up in the corner behind my bed, pulling my knees up to my chest, hugging my arms tightly, willing myself to disappear, hoping that if I just stopped breathing, maybe I could become invisible. Then I heard the footsteps again. They were closer now. Whoever was out there was outside my door. I could hear them pacing back and forth, like they were just outside my door, waiting, listening, and I knew that whatever was out there was waiting for me to do something. So I did the last thing I could think of. I closed my eyes. I whispered to myself, it's just the wind. It's just the wind, and waited for the inevitable. I hoped that whatever was out there would go away, but it never did. I don't know how long I spent sitting there. It felt like hours, but it could have been minutes. I don't know. Time lost all meaning after that. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, drowning out all other sounds. I couldn't think of anything except for the hope that whatever was out there would go away. But it never did. When I was certain that whatever was out there was going to break in, I actually started to calm down. I began to accept that I would have to face whatever was coming, that I couldn't hide forever. I was scared, really scared, but I was also strangely calm. I had waited long enough for whatever was going to happen to me to happen. I heard a loud crash and I flinched. I was ready, but it wasn't what I expected. I heard a loud crash. I flinched. I was ready, but it wasn't what I expected. Then I heard a faint whisper. It was just outside my door. "I'm right here!" I screamed and I ran to the door, throwing it open. I stepped out into the hallway and looked around. There was nothing there. No one. No one was there. My apartment was silent again. I quickly shut the door and locked it, sliding the bolt into place. Then I leaned against the door, sliding down to the floor. I was shaking. I couldn't stop shaking. My heart was pounding so hard in my chest that I thought it would explode. I called 911, but all I could say was, "There's someone in my apartment. I can hear him. He's just outside my door." The operator calmly asked me questions, but I couldn't answer them. I couldn't speak. I tried to tell her what was happening, but all that came out was a whisper. "He's here." She sent police to my apartment, but when they got there, they found nothing. They asked if anyone else was in the apartment with me, and I lied and said no. I didn't want them to know that I was home alone. I was embarrassed and scared. They searched the apartment, but they found no signs of forced entry. No footprints. No one hiding. They said it was probably just a dream. But I know what I heard. I stayed in that apartment for 2 more days, but I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every shadow, every wind gust reminded me of the footsteps. Pacing outside my door at 3 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I moved out. Now, I don't know if it was real or if it was a dream, but all I know is that if you re-home alone tonight and you hear footsteps in the hallway, maybe don't investigate. Maybe just don't look. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.